Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the MCU Perspectives What If Edition. And today we're going to be discussing episode 15 of Marvel's What If. What if Kahhori reshaped the world? Now wait, who's Kahhori? She's not a character from the MCU. Well, that's because, like I mentioned last week, today we're going to be focusing on an original character. Yep, the main character of this particular episode is one who was created specifically for What If. She has not appeared in any other form of Marvel media at all, and to my knowledge, this is her first MCU adjacent appearance in anything MCU related. But with that said, is she a good original character? Is this first outing with her worthy of being held in the upper echelons of all the other Marvel superheroes that have appeared? Well, let's take a look at this episode and find out. So, what's this world's point of divergence? Well, you know what the Tesseract is, right? Big cosmic cube that has the power to actually open gateways across time and space, was actually the Space Stone, and was utilized by various figures across history who get to either give them superpowers or be used as a weapon, blah bitty blah bitty blah. Basically, the Tesseract has been around the MCU in quite a few places. However, the one thing that's consistent with the Tesseract is that it apparently came from Asgard. Now, in the main MCU timeline, the Tesseract wound up falling into the hands of this old village, and eventually found its way into the hands of the Red Skull, who used it as a power source for his army before, well, it kind of sort of damned him. When it wound up making him the guardian of the Soul Stone. However, in this reality, Odin never had the chance to send the Tesseract down to that little village. Why? Because Asgard went boom. In this reality, Surtur, who is destined to destroy Asgard in Ragnarok, well, he arrived to Asgard a little earlier than he did in the main MCU timeline. And as a result, well, he destroyed Asgard before Odin even had the chance to send the Tesseract away. And so, in a final clash between Odin and Surtur, the Tesseract was essentially lost to space and was thrown across the stars until it did still land on Earth, but not in that little village that Odin would have sent it to. Rather, it actually landed in America. Specifically, it wound up landing near a Mohawk nation and wound up crashing into the water and splintering, effectively altering the lake that it landed in and transforming it into a source of both cosmic power as well as a portal. Essentially, any who were able to enter the lake were gifted cosmic abilities and were brought to this world that was created by the Tesseract, or maybe even in the Tesseract, I don't know, that they wound up calling the Sky World, wherein the energies of the Tesseract were essentially seeping into every form of life. The trees, the food, the water, the animals, essentially everything that lived here was infused with this cosmic power, and, well, the Mohawk Nation wound up giving people to this thing, which in turn gave them more power, but as a consequence of having to go to the Sky World and no one knowing how to get out, since, well, the portal to Sky World was in their, well, literal sky, essentially people started thinking the land was cursed. And on top, more specifically, people were fighting over the power. Eventually, the Mohawk nations went to war, and eventually, in the midst of all the death and destruction, the lake was labeled as cursed, and everyone just stayed away from it, wanting nothing to do with it. However, that's where our main character comes in, Kahhori, as she and her younger brother, whose name is Wata, decide to essentially go out and look outside the village, as Kahhori is curious about this cursed lake, so to speak, and she just wants to see what it looks like, see what all the hubbub is about. And while Wata is trying to get her to slow down, she's of course just more excited about it because she wants to see what everyone's so afraid of. But when Kahhori and Wata arrive at the lake, it's just a lake. It's barely anything. In fact, they've even have ducks floating on the surface. It's just a regular old lake. They don't really see what the big deal is with this thing. Apparently, especially since the legends say it swallowed people whole. So, yeah, it just seems like crap. However, as the pair are looking at the supposed cursed lake, they end up hearing what sounds like gunfire. And when Kahhori actually tries listening into this, she soon learns that the gunfire is coming from their village. And sure enough, when they run back to the village and see what's going on, the place is burning to the ground, and the people who are burning it are Spanish conquistadors, led by an asshat by the name of Rodrigo Alfonso Gonzalo. And they are here because they are looking for the prophesied Fountain of Youth, and they know that this particular Mohawk village is essentially playing host to it, because, you know, the whole legends of the Cursed Lake and whatnot. As such, they're pretty much just raiding the village, grabbing whoever they can find, and are trying to get them to tell them where it is. Unfortunately, as Kahhori and Wada are watching all this, they wind up getting the attention of a few conquistadors, and ultimately they make a run for it, with the conquistadors chasing after them. They end up running all the way back to the lake because they really have nowhere else to go, but as they're traveling, they end up hitting like a weak patch of land that causes them to fall through to an underground cave. And this does allow them to briefly elude the conquistadors, but as they venture further into the cave, well, it's here where they find the real lake. The one above is essentially just a decoy that meant just put there so that people would be dissuaded and think the legends were just that, legends. And as a result, but either way, when Kahhori and Wada approach the lake, they can tell this is the real deal because it's just glowing blue and clearly radiating with some kind of cosmic energy. Of course, both are smart enough to not touch this water, but it's at this point when the conquistadors manage to follow them into the cave, or at least one does. And so Kahhori and Wada end up hiding, and as the conquistador looks around for them, he soon finds the lake and realizes, oh shit, this is exactly what we're looking for. But unfortunately, before he can report back to anyone, that's when Wada ends up making a noise from his hiding spot, and the conquistador ends up zeroing in on him. As a result, Wada and Kahhori end up fighting this guy to try and get him away from them. But unfortunately, that's when a second conquistador arrives, and he ends up pointing his rifle at Kahhori, who's giving his friend a bit more trouble, and he ends up shooting her, causing her to fall back first into the lake, much to Wada's horror. As such, the conquistadors manage to overpower the kid, and as a final fuck you, they take his necklace, and they end up bringing him back to the village. But back with Kahhori, let's just say the gunshot didn't actually kill her, because as she floats down through the lake, the water does manage to revive her enough so that she's able to see something in the bottom of the lake, something glowing, and sure enough, yeah, it's the Tesseract, and as she looks at it, suddenly she feels the suction of this thing as it quite literally just swallows her down into its depths, and, well, she essentially has her insides torn inside and out as she's transported across time and space to the Sky World, where she is thankfully unharmed. And upon arriving, she of course wants to know where the hell she is, because Skyworld looks similar enough to our world, but very different. As the trees are glowing, the sky is like a radiant, is like a light purple. There's of course the portal that brought her here in the sky. It's clearly something strange. However, as Kahhori is trying to get her bearings, she finds she's not alone here, as she ends up running into a few more Mohawk people who tell her that she's okay, she's safe, before, well, she passes out. From there, when we cut back to Kahhori later, we find that she's been tended to by these people, as her wounds are healed and she's feeling a lot better. As she decides to start looking around, she finds that yeah, there's a thriving community of Mohawk people in this world, and all of them are very different than regular people, as a majority of them seem to be exhibiting superpowers. They can levitate things with their mind. They can float. They can fly. They can shoot energy. Some of them even have glowing eyes. Basically, it's clear that these people are not normal. And it's here where Kahhori ends up meeting one of the people that saved her. And his name is, again, I wrote it down so I remember everything. His name is Atarox. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. I probably very much am. And pretty much Atarox is kind of like her guides to this whole thing. Basically, yeah. This is basically the Sky World is where everyone who got swallowed by the lake wound up. And of course, he explains to Kahhori how this place basically irradiates this energy, that everything is essentially filled with it. And the longer you stay here, the longer you consume the food, drink the water, and partake of the land, the more that cosmic power becomes a part of you. And on top of that, an added benefit of living in the Sky World, no one ages. Apparently, people have been here here for quite a long time, and they have not aged a single day upon arriving. Hell, to kind of give an example, Otterox mentions how when he was a kid, he heard legends about the lake swallowing people up, including his cousin, and yet here he is as a grown man, and his cousin is just like a few feet away doing his own thing. Basically, it's clear that everyone here is benefiting majorly from the energies of the Tesseract, but while this place does seem like a paradise, Kahhori is more concerned about her people, especially since the last thing she saw was her brother being taken away by conquistadors. So she kind of wants to get out of here and get back to our world as quickly as possible. The only problem is that's not impossible. Like I said, the portal is in the sky, and like I said, people can't leave. Nobody can leave. And as such, Kahhori can't, and as such, even if people wanted to go, the portal is too high up to reach, and a lot of people don't want to go. Like I said, to them, this is paradise. They don't think they don't think that this is worth leaving for. They left all the conflicts behind. They're happier here. And Otterox even suggests that Kahhori do the exact same. You know, just let it go. Have a good time here. She'll feel fine. She'll feel content, she'll feel happy, but Kahhori very much wants to just get out of here. As such, she ends up running back to the portal, and she tries figuring out how to get up there, but while Otterox is continually telling her that she won't be able to leave, he does at least give her a few pointers about, well, the cosmic what's-its, because as long as she's here, the energy is beginning to seep into her as well. And as such, while she and Otterox are climbing a tree, the cosmic energies from within the tree begin interacting with her, and he does inform her how to, well, properly utilize it. That she can channel it and utilize and use it in different forms, which Kahhori is able to use perfectly, as she's able to use the cosmic energy to essentially give her a high jump, so to speak, as she's able to use the energy to blast herself off and just jump from branch to branch with Otterox following after in the same manner. On top of that, as she gets the highest point of the tree, it just becomes a matter of getting to the portal. Unfortunately, though, while she's able to learn the whole levitation trick rather well with her powers, as she summons a bunch of branches and tries using them as a makeshift, well, not a ladder, makeshift steps, again, the branches themselves are too weak, so no matter how far she gets, eventually the powers are going to fade, and she will eventually just fall, and she'll just fall to the ground. As such, it's becoming more and more clear that Kahhori might not be able to leave the same way she came. However, this ultimately gets put on hold as they hear a horn call, and Otterox is excited because apparently the hunt is on, which Kahhori is confused by, but Otterox says that it'll be fine, that she'll like this. And sure enough, she and the rest of the people here gather into this field, and they see what look like these giant mounds of fruit, which Otterox mentions that these are that this is a special kind of fruit. That they only grow seldom, but they're very much edible, and everyone loves them. And part of the hunt is just gathering them. Of course, Kahhori asks the obvious question: why don't they just pick the fruit if everyone likes it so much? Which Otterox says, well, where's the fun in that? At which point we see an elder come up, and after blowing on a flower or using a call, I don't remember the specifics. Well, it turns out the mounds that these fruit grow from, they're alive. They're like giant buffalo or mammoths or whatever, and once they wake up, they start stampeding, and that's where the thrill of the hunt comes in. As basically the Mohawk people just use this as like a game. They basically just run with the stampede, jump on top of these beasts, and then just start picking the fruit from them. And well, that's what Kahhori and Otterox are here for. As they run with the crowd, and we see another benefit of having the cosmic energy: super speed. As they're just kind of running around and just jumping from all these creatures from one by one. And Kahhori just starts getting more and more into it. In fact, she's actually a natural when it comes to these cosmic powers, as she actually starts outracing everybody. But she soon gets a little too big for her britches as she runs so fast that she sees a rock coming up, and rather than stopping, she just kind of does a swift turn, putting her right in front of the stampede. However, she ends up showing, in a bit of a panic, she ends up using her powers and actually manages to, well, flip the lead beast as it actually flies over her, and she ends up pulling off quite a bit of the fruit from its back. And thankfully, it does manage to land on its feet and continue running. But yeah, it's clear Kahhori these powers are a lot more natural to Kahhori than they are to everyone else here. And as a result, once the stampede is done and everyone's dividing up their spoils, Kahhori comes in with a crap ton of fruit, and so everyone starts kind of celebrating her. and well, Kahhori actually does start getting into this a little. She does kind of like, and she is enjoying these powers, and the company she's keeping are rather nice people. In fact, later on, as they're celebrating, they're dancing, and basically even Irox is saying, "So you liking it here now?" Because earlier she said this place is a prison, and he says, "Are you think this is a prison now?" So yeah, everything seems all hunky dory, right? Well, remember the Spanish conquistadors? Yeah, they were busy while all this was going on. As the asshole that was leading them, again, I know I said his name, but I gotta look it back up again, Rodrigo gathers all the Mohawk people and ends up threatening them to tell him where the lake is, but nobody says a word. Unfortunately, that's when those two conquistadors come back with Wada, and they're basically able to confirm to him that they found the Fountain of Youth. As such, Rodrigo goes to it, and basically he sends his men into the lake, thinking that they'll be younger now, that everything will be good. But you gotta remember that the lake's essentially a portal to the sky world, and so all of the soldiers he throws into the lake get dunked down. And so, without really having any context on how the lake works, he just assumes that his men are dead and swallowed up. And so he assumes that this place is actually cursed, like the legends say. And so he orders the remaining conquistadors to just chain up the Mohawk people, bring them back with them, and they're just gonna abandon this place and never come back. Meanwhile, with the conquistadors that got sucked through the sky world, they of course wonder where the hell they are. Though they kind of quickly abandon that line of thought as they realize, hey, this place looks cool. We probably can get some nice treasure here. And sure enough, they end up seeing the Mohawk celebration nearby, and they immediately just sneak over there. And so as Kahhori is just dancing around with Irox and enjoying herself, well, she looks into the forest and sees these guys pointing their rifles at the group, which immediately causes Kahhori to just drop all pretense of fun as she just throws Irox to the ground to keep him getting shot. And so as the conquistadors end up shooting them with their rifles, she's able to use her powers to hold the bullets in place before just dropping them and then pulling the rifles. At which point, she just starts getting pissed off as she uses her powers to grab the conquistadors and pull them in, wanting to know what the hell they're doing here, what's going on with their village, what they want. But immediately all thoughts are put on hold as she sees one soldier wearing her brother's necklace. At which point she rips it off and quickly realizes these people have been hurting our home. We have to go back. And basically, as she just throws these people to the ground, the land actually begins reacting to her anger as it just wraps these conquistadors up, and some of them even look like they're about to get choked. And it's Adrox that's able to talk Kahhori down, but only from killing them. Her rage is still very much present, and she realizes she can't stay here. She does need to go back. And while Adrox continues telling her, no, you should stay here. It's better here. We've abandoned all that war. Basically, she's not having any of that shit, as just in her raw fury, she looks to the portal, and she essentially just tries using her power to force it down from the sky. And while it takes a little bit of effort, well, she actually managed to bring the portal down to ground level in a flash of light. And so she asks everyone to come join her and save their people, but everybody in this land have been too complacent for too long. They don't really want to go back and join a war, especially since none of them are really soldiers. But ultimately, Kahhori says that those people behind that portal are her people, and they're in danger. And if these people care at all, then they'll want to help. These people care about her at all, or what this land represents, then they'll come back and help her. As such, Kahhori, after turning her back to these people, once again steps through the portal and reemerges in the Cursed Lake. The cosmic power she was given in the Sky World, still staying with her as she changes planes. As such, she immediately runs back to her village and finds that it's just abandoned with all the buildings on fire. But sure enough, yeah, Rodrigo made good on his promise as he's chained up all the Mohawk people and is bringing them out to the ships off the coastline. As such, immediately Kahhori runs to them, and after kind of doing a little bit of voodoo as she runs around, and all they can see is a blue flash, because again, cosmic energy, eventually she makes herself known, and the conquistadors just open fire on her. Thankfully, she's able to use her powers to just stop all their bullets and knock them aside, and basically Rodrigo proclaims that she's a witch, and everyone just charges at her, and she just kind of starts throwing everyone aside, knocking them down, using her powers and just whooping everybody's ass. She's actually kind of winning. And as such, while Rodrigo keeps trying to throw men at her, again, it's clear that even with numbers on their side, she's winning this battle. As such, while Rodrigo thinks about shooting her with his gun, he quickly realizes, hey, how could she handle a cannon? As such, he immediately orders his ships to open fire on her with their cannons, And well, while Kahhori is able to throw up a shield and stop enough of the cannonballs that fly at her, one of them manages to get through the portal because it still takes a lot of effort and manages to clunk her in the head. And she doesn't die from this because I'm assuming that the cosmic What's-This is protecting her, but it does knock her to the ground and take the wind out of her. As such, this allows Rodrigo to get in close and essentially pull his sword out and put it to her throat. But before he can deliver a killing blow, he looks to the forest and sees a lot more glowing eyes in there. And sure enough, all the Mohawk people from the Sky World just start running out and charging at everyone. And they're not attacking. I mean, they're just like charging through and they're just ramming right into Rodrigo. So much so they actually knock him to the ground and they're just running all the way out and they're just running over him with every step they do, just burying him under the sand a little bit more and more. At which point, Atarox shows up and tells Kahhori that she was right, that she's inspired them, and as a result, he joins the rest of the Mohawk people as they rush out and start taking out the ships. As they're like ramming right into the ships with their faces, because again, super speed, they can run on water. And so basically, Kahhori's about to join them until Rodrigo tries grabbing her from underneath the sand, but she delivers one final coup de grace and essentially pile drives him into the ground, presumably killing him. As such, she ends up running out to the ships to join their people. And she does manage to find the ship where her brother is, returning his necklace, and of course he's happy to see her, happy that she's alive. Again, I'm just looking up what her brother's name is. Wata, yeah. Wada, and so Wada meets Atarox, and basically Kahhori just tells her brother to keep an eye on all this because everything they're gonna be doing here is legendary. They're gonna need songs to remember it, and Atarox just tells Wada to sit back and watch his sister do her thing as she essentially dive bombs a group of conquistadors in slow motion while the Watcher narrates. So it is pretty cool. But from there, time does actually pass in real time, as apparently the Queen of Spain, Isabella, well, this was not her only assault. Apparently, after Rodrigo and his team supposedly vanished, she wound up sending more people, but thanks to Kahhori and the rest of the people from the Sky World, well, everyone that she sent there really were all defeated. And while one of the Queen's attendants tells her that the New World is just kind of lost to them, that they don't need it anymore, the Queen just kind of scoffs at this because she's the Queen. Everything belongs to her, after all. But it's at this point when she's kind of knocked off her high horse as a portal opens up and Kahhori walks through because she wants to have a word with the Queen. At which point the Queen is outraged that this lady would come into her throne, especially when Kahhori mentions how the lands don't belong no more to the Queen than they do to Kahhori. And so the Queen just immediately orders her guards to kill her, but again, Kahhori just walks through them. And while the Queen immediately tries throwing her weight around, saying, "I'm the Queen, I'm ordained to rule you, you'll do what I say, blah, 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 blah." Basically, Kahhori used her powers to lift her up, drop her, before grabbing her throne and then just ripping it apart at every point. However, this show of force would feel like that Kahhori's essentially coming in and proclaiming herself the new leader, but no. If anything, Kahhori just wants to stop the fighting. She's not here to conquer. She's here to make peace, and she's pretty much making it clear that if Isabella wants to continue fighting, then she's gonna lose, and ultimately, Kahhori believes that Kahhori's people need the Queen of Spain just as much as the Queen of Spain need her. So ultimately, it's decided that they probably should at least try and foster peace. So while we don't end up seeing the end results, I'm guessing that, well, the Queen has to really comply, because would you argue with the girl who can literally just throw you around without a second thought, can create energy projections and moves at super speed? I don't think you would. However, as this peace settlement comes to a close, we get an unexpected visitor as another portal opens, and we see someone floats through, congratulating Kahhori on creating peace, though telling her that he wonders how long it'll last. And as the figure comes through, he proclaims that he's been looking for Kahhori for some time. And the episode ends as we see who this visitor is. Doctor Strange Supreme. So yeah, that's that episode. So, my thoughts on this episode of What If. It's alright. I feel like I'm gonna get on someone's shit list for saying that, but genuinely, I think the episode is just alright. Not awful, but definitely decent in its own regard. I feel like the main problem for me, believe it or not, is, well, For one thing, it's some areas of the episode feel a little rushed in some plot progression. And secondly, I want to stress right now that this does not that I do not think that this is like kind of a two-sided criticism, as in I like part as there's still aspects of it that I like, but ultimately there's this criticism. I think Kahhori may be a bit of an overpowered superhero. Now, before anyone jumps down my throat, I want to make something clear. I like Kahhori. I think as a main character, she's enjoyable. She's likable. She has strong convictions. She wants nothing more than to help her people. And at the end of the day, I do think that her utilization of her superpowers is actually really creative and cool. I like the different array of abilities she showcases. I like how she just wants nothing more than to help her people. We're showcased that she has an adventurous spirit, and that she, at the end of the day, she does care about others, especially her brother, and that while she is willing to goof around, her priority is always going to be for her people. My problem with her is I feel like that she should have had more time to acclimate to the powers, believe it or not. The thing is, while it is cool to see a main character become strong and master their abilities, so to speak. In the case of Kahhori, as they mentioned in the episode, she's a natural with her powers, and as a result, once the cosmic energies of the Skyland begin kind of seeping into her body, she just gets it like that, which in a regard should show that she's a natural. But I kind of would have liked it if we had seen her struggling more. And before anyone brings up how she was having trouble with the sticks or how she was overcharging when it came to the running, those were like very little isolated incidents. I feel like that it would have been better if we had seen her struggling, showing her kind of actually having an innate talent with the abilities, but still kind of missing the mark in a few key areas, things that she could actually work on. And as a result, as she starts learning how to use the powers, sorry, Chinny jumped off the bed. As she's beginning learning to use the powers, it feels like that she's too good with them. Like she's just gotten them so she's already taken to them like that. And I feel like that's kind of missing a step when it comes to a superhero origin story. I'm not saying that she shouldn't be this good with these powers. I would have been honestly, it would have been cool to see her training with them and then see the climax of the episode happen anyway, and show that all of her training paid off as she's ready to kick ass and save her people. But the problem is that because they only show her struggling a little bit, and I do emphasize the little bit, it feels as though she really isn't. It feels as though she's a little too good, so to speak. Now, I'm not saying that makes her a bad character. Like I said, as a character, I do enjoy seeing her as she is likable enough. She is likable enough and has strong convictions. I just would have liked it more if we had seen her struggling more with the powers, taking to them more. Because after all, suddenly gaining superpowers is not as easy to understand as one would get, especially in the case of the cosmic powers, because, well, tell me the number of people who would be used to lifting things with their mind, who would be able to master super speed, which, okay, I'll give you that one. She did struggle with that, as she essentially kicked into overdrive right from the get-go and had no idea how to slow down, so I'll give you that one. But showing the adeptness of subconsciously flipping over the giant buffalo, and being able to pull a portal out of the sky from raw fury after just one day of using these powers, or being able to master the jumping right away, and the only struggle she has is that she has trouble walking on the sticks and falling on her face several times, and then likewise again the super speed. Plus, I guess you could say the cannons, but I feel like that she would have struggled with that even if she had master powers, so I'll let that one slide. My point is this: while I do like seeing her utilizing her powers, and they are a cool set of powers in a cool array, I feel like it would have been better if we had seen her training with them, actually struggling with them more, trying to get used to the idea of having these abilities as a part of her now, and having to figure out what to do, and trying to figure out how to best use them, how to best control them. I feel like that would have been a lot better. So seeing her get so used to them right away and just essentially showing such an array of power that she's able to do things that nobody else even considered doing, I don't know. It feels just a little weird. It just feels a little weird. So I am going to consider that a problem. And kind of in a similar vein, I also mentioned that there were some plot developments that feel rushed. Sadly, that is also another case with the story. There are moments in the episode where the plot really just feels rushed. Like things go from A to B rather quickly. And I don't mean that in the sense of like things just happen. I don't mean that in the sense that everything. I don't mean that in the sense of everything feels like it's all thrown in your face. No, I mean just like there are a couple points in the episode where I feel like we should have had more time between development. Like when Kahhori suddenly has her suddenly starts being happy here in the sky world before she realizes, oh shit, these people are hurting, these conquistadors are hurting my people, I need to go back. I feel like we could have had again a moment where she was like, what am I doing here? I've been distracting myself, I should be going back there. I would have at least liked that. Would have at least liked to have that moment. Or maybe we actually see her actually chatting with some of the people in the sky world and learning about them and trying to convince them, hey, there's still things there left to fight for and so forth. It feels like that some plot points move a little too quickly, and I feel like these things happen more in the third act than they do in the first two acts. So in that regard, the plot does feel a little rushed. And if I can give another criticism, I guess the villains, I suppose. The villains are very much just your standard typical jackass villains. They're of course meant to be the Spanish conquistadors. And before anyone jumps down my throat and says that what the Spanish conquistadors did was actually a good thing, fuck no, they were very bad. That was very bad. This was very bad. What they were doing was bad. And even in the episode, them just attacking indigenous people because, hey, we want what you have. Very bad things. It's just that again, there's not really a lot to them. They're literally just evil. They're literally just jackasses because, hey, we're the white people. So I feel like that there could have been more complexity, though, to be fair, maybe you don't need to when it comes down to it, sometimes you don't need that big of a complex villain. And plus, I'm a white guy, so maybe I don't have any right to talk about this. So I'm just gonna kind of stop talking about it now before I say something too stupid and show just how much of a jackass I really am. So so to anyone who's offended, I apologize. I really am sorry. My point is, the bad guys are just kind of generic baddies whose only goal is they want wealth and riches. So again, kind of standard bland, so kind of bland stuff, but not too bad. They get the job done at least. But with that said, though, the episode is still actually really cool. I like that they're taking What If and essentially just using it to tell an original story. And before you say, aren't all of them original stories? Well, yes, but the whole point of What If is that they branch off from the set of events that we know in the MCU timeline and go off in their own directions. Even in just basically taking these identifiable moments that you would recognize from any of the movies and essentially saying, what if this happened instead of that? Like, what if Iron Man crashed into the Grand Master? That took the ending of the original Avengers and then said, well, what if Tony Stark didn't make it back to Earth and so forth? Or, I'm trying to remember another one. Like, or what if hold on a second. Or what if Peter Quill attacked Earth's mightiest heroes? Again, they took the whole they took Star-Lord's origin and then pretty much just said, well, what if things went according to plan and he was delivered to his dad? Again, these are identifiable moments, and they still take elements from that have been pre-established in the MCU and start essentially telling these new tales with them. And like I said, but which again, those aren't bad. The stories aren't bad. The thing is, though, those are pre-established elements, so we can still identify them despite the change in circumstances. Whereas this episode, it goes off in a very different direction, as the point of divergence in this reality happens so far back that the changes that it eventually creates are felt long before any of the superheroes in the main MCU timeline would have been created. Case in point, in this reality, Ragnarok came for Asgard a lot earlier than it did in the original timeline, and so as a result, the Tesseract was lost to space, crash landed on Earth, and that's when the Mohawk people were made aware of it and were given access to the Sky World. And so as a result, this point of divergence resulted in an entirely new set of events occurring that involved people not familiar to the MCU timeline. And I'll still kind of shake my head at how Kahhori was able to acclimate to the power so quickly, I like her as a main character. She has conviction. She's fun. She can be creative with her abilities. She knows she's likable. She has energy, and she's dedicated to her people. In that regard, Kahhori does feel like a strong lead. This is the whole thing with her learning her powers is probably just a pet peeve of my own. But in that regard, the way she utilizes her powers, how the array of different abilities she has, I think are pretty cool. And at the end of the day, the episode is essentially her origin story as a superhero. Her gaining these powers, facing an enemy that her people that her people have no way of actually challenging. And trying to do her best to protect her way of life while keeping those that she loves and cares about safe. And by the end, she doesn't try and use these experiences to think that all white people are bad. No, she just understands that the reason they're going through all these steps is because they're being fueled by greed, and that if she really wants to have this stop, then it shouldn't be conquer the enemy. It should be bring peace. Have them bring. It's essentially just bring peace. She doesn't, like, when she goes to the Queen of Spain, she doesn't go in there and say, I'm in charge now. She tells her, just stop. It's clear you want something of ours, and it's clear that you have things that we would benefit from as well, so why don't we just, try and talk this out? And when the Queen tells her, fuck that, I want your shit and I'm not giving you anything, that's when Kahhori kind of does need to force the issue a little, as she uses her powers to showcase that if the Queen wanted to fight her head on, she's gonna keep losing. So I think that that's a very interesting, so I do actually like that progression, and I do like seeing Kahhori's conviction in that regard. So for that matter, I do like that. It's an interesting and unique origin story with an actually unique and interesting setting. I love how, and on top of that, part of what makes the episode really work, in my opinion, is that, well, they actually got, when this episode was being written up, Marvel Studios actually did get help from representatives from the Mohawk Nation and people. So they worked to really make the story feel as accurate as possible. Now, I don't really when it comes to Native American history, you probably need to ask someone other than me about when it comes to all this stuff. So, at the end of the day, I'm just an ignorant white jackass, so I don't know anything about what I'm doing. But I do kind of like seeing how well they try and showcase how the Mohawk people live, how they try and integrate the struggles they went through, and how they're able to use that culture as a baseline for Kahhori and her origins. I love seeing that in the backdrop. I love how they kind of mix that with the cosmic stuff when we go to the sky world, as we see the Mohawk people living there and still living with the land, utilizing the resources while still kind of acclimating to the cosmic energies and powers that come from, living in this land. It's honestly really unique and interesting, and I find myself drawn into this world and wanting to see more of it. The design for Skyworld is beautiful. It just so exotic and makes me want to continue seeing it from a distance. I like just going through it. I love seeing it explored. I love seeing how the wildlife develop here. I love seeing I love seeing the abilities that Kahhori and the other Mohawk people that live here have developed after staying here for so long. I do actually like the action scenes. They're pretty good. On top of that, well, I feel like the last third is definitely where things can get a little rushed when it comes to the story. The first two thirds do hammer in the danger that Kahhori and your people are in as Rodrigo and the Conquistadors arrive, and it does still feel very horrific just seeing everything they built just burn down because, well, again, greed. Because the whole reason Rodrigo and the Conquistadors came here was because the Queen of Spain wanted the Fountain of Youth, and they thought that it was here, and so, yeah, all shit people around, so they're just shit people all around, and ultimately, and while I will still give crap that they feel like too simple villains, though maybe I'm just being an idiot. At the end of the day, it does still kind of hammer in just how much of a tragedy this is, and ultimately it does help you sympathize with Kahhori more, because you do want to see these asshats get theirs because of how they're torturing these people just because they want the fruits of a legend. So just kind of a weird thing. So in that regard, like I said, the episode, in my opinion, is alright. Again, its faults mostly lie in that I feel like Kahhori should have had more time to develop her powers, / should have struggled with them a bit more before she fully mastered them. And the last third does feel a bit rushed in terms of plot progression, but I do think the first two thirds do have a nice steady, do introduce the plot in a nice steady fashion. I love the action. I love, Kahhori, I feel like Kahhori can be a little OP with how quickly she acclimated the powers. I think as a main character, she's good. I think she's well written enough. I think that I do sympathize with her interactions, and thus it does make everything look cool. I love seeing the unique display of powers that she showcases. She dukes out with the Spanish conquistadors. I love like I said, I love the action. It does. I love how they managed to steep the cosmics. How they managed to intersperse the big cosmic stuff in the MCU with the Mohawk culture and essentially, I'm just gonna say world, basically just the whole culture of the people, and so to speak. It actually does it in a way that feels natural and interesting in that regard. Which kind of adding to that same thing, this entire episode is not in English at all. Almost the entire episode is told either in Mohawk language, or is either told in the Mohawk language, or in Spanish, with only like 2 or 3 characters actually speaking in English, and those characters are Surtur, Odin, the Watcher, and Strange Supreme when he pops up at the end of the episode. They're the only characters that speak English throughout this whole episode. Beyond that, everyone else speaks in Spanish, so they clearly try to keep this as authentic as possible. So again, gotta give respect to that. So in the end of the day, do I think Kahhori is a good addition to the MCU? I say yes. I think she is. As a character, I think she has strong enough convictions and if she reappeared again, I think that she would be fun and would be interesting to see alongside other superheroes in the MCU. But as for the episode itself, it's an alright episode. A good origin story for Kahhori that, while flawed in some areas, at the end of the day, I think it does its job well, actually creates a rather unique and interesting superhero with her own unique and interesting setting. It's got plenty of action there, some unique visuals, a cool power set with the hero, and at the end of the day, I think it's just an entertaining episode, and quite frankly, I think it's I think it's just fun. It's just a fun episode, and definitely an interesting episode for What If, so... yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. Again, I apologize if anything I said pissed someone off. Like I said, ignorant white jackass, so feel free to call me out in the comments if you think that anything that I say is offensive or ignorant in any regard. Please, it's the only way I'll learn. But I do at least hope that you enjoyed the video, and next time we return to What If, well, we are going to be going back to more traditional setting with that. As well, we see what would happen to Hela, the goddess of death, if Odin banished her to Earth instead of Thor. So till then, I hope you have a good day, and take care.